Hi, I'm Justin with Warren, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our Mountain Tech line of rings and rails. We already have a rail mounted to this Christensen Arms rifle, and this is a 20 MOA rail. If you're looking for the base installation, I would recommend looking at our base installation video. The process for mounting a one-piece compared to a two-piece is the same process. Some of the key points of the Mountain Tech series of rings and rails is that they're all made of 7075 T6 billet aluminum. They're all hard coat anodized, and they have stainless steel hardware. The base doesn't have stainless screws. It actually has a slightly different screw. It's a carbon steel screw, but it has a black nickel coating on it to make it completely corrosion resistant. Another unique feature is that it has a slight bevel to the bottom side of the screw, and that has a couple different benefits. Number one, it centers the screw in the hole as you're torquing it to the gun, so you are guaranteed that your rail is going to be perfectly aligned on your receiver every time. But the other benefit is that having that slight bevel, having that slight shoulder, it acts as a recoil lug almost. So under recoil, there's nowhere for that base to slip. That base can't move forward or back. And it's a very light but very strong platform. So if you're building a precision rifle, a tactical rifle, lightweight hunting rifle, or really any other purpose rifle, it's a great fit for a lightweight but very strong ring. Some of the other features of the rings are that it is a STANAG compliant mount, meaning that how it attaches, it actually hugs down to the top of the rail and the bottom sides, compared to a Weaver or Picatinny style where it's grabbing the points on that particular rail. They have a 1/2 inch nut to attach to the rail, 65 inch-pounds of torque. The rest of the screws have a T15 Torx bit. We recommend 18 inch-pounds of torque. So we're going to go ahead and mount up a scope. The scope we're going to be using is this Leica. It's a 30 millimeter tube. Again, this is already a 20 MOA rail mounted on the gun. We're going to use a set of our medium height. The part number is a 7214M ring, medium 30 millimeter tube height. When you get it in the package, this is exactly like it will look. First step you're going to do is remove both caps from the rings. I've already removed one of the caps. There are 4 screws per cap. Then you're going to loosen the 1/2 inch nut so we can fit both rings to the rail. You can run these rings with the nut on either side of the rail, on the right side or left side. It's entirely your choice. I'm going to put these on the right side just to show when we're torquing them. So the next thing you're going to do is actually put the base of the ring onto the rail. You're going to have to kind of estimate based on your scope where those are going to go. But I think this one's going to fit right about here. And I think the other one's going to fit about there. So next step is we're actually going to torque these 1/2 inch nuts. And when we torque the 1/2 inch nut, it's important to note that you want to push forward on each ring. There's a little bit of play in the slot. You want to push each ring toward the muzzle, which is going to seat the face of the recoil key against the slot. That ensures that both rings are working and the recoil key is pushed all the way forward, so there's nowhere for the ring to go under recoil. And we're going to do the same with the rear ring, pushing forward as we just snug that down. I'm going to use our TW65 torque wrench. This is a 65 inch-pound torque wrench that will actually beep and click over when it reaches the correct amount of torque. Then you'll place your scope in the rings. And if everything looks good on the tube size, usually your eyepiece is going to be somewhere around your bolt handle, like I have here. And this looks good. So the next step after you've applied your caps is to actually start all 8 screws, 4 screws per cap, and we're going to just slightly snug them down. And not enough that it's actually going to clamp on the scope tube, but enough that you could still move the tube. It's important to try to keep your pressure even as you're tightening down all 8 screws. So I'm at a point where I can still move this scope, but there's a very slight amount of tension on it. And after this, I would go and set my eye relief and level my reticle. It's important to set your eye relief and level your reticle at the maximum magnification of the scope in the prone position, because that's when it's most critical. You're closest to the rifle when you're actually seated. So when you have it on the minimum magnification, the eye relief is more forgiving at that point. So the next step after we have leveled our reticle and set our eye relief for our scope is actually torquing all 8 cap screws. And to torque all 8 cap screws, you want to tighten them in an X fashion. So if I were to tighten this ring, we want to try to keep the pressure even as we're tightening them down. So I'm going to tighten one side and snug it a little bit, go to the opposite corner and snug it a little bit, then the other side, same procedure, opposite corner, and snug it down as well. You're going to do the same thing with the rear ring, applying just a little bit of pressure. This is basically going to keep your reticle from being drug off center as you're tightening the screws. It's keeping even torque as you go. And you're just going to snug a little bit at a time. So the next thing we're going to do is actually torque down the caps on these rings. We recommend 18 inch-pounds of torque, and I'm going to use a torque wrench to accomplish that. And in the same fashion that I just slightly snug them down, I'm going to alternate from each corner and apply a little bit of torque at a time until I get to the point where I reach 18 inch-pounds. I like to go about 5 inch-pounds at a time, but you don't have to. So after we've torqued everything down, the rifle is ready to bore sight and take to the range and fire. Another feature about the Mountain Tech rings is that, like our quick detach rings, they will return to 0 every time if you remove the scope and put it back on. The major difference is the fact that it has these 1/2 inch nuts that you would loosen to remove the scope. But when you put it back on, it's the same procedure. You're going to push forward toward the muzzle as you tighten the 1/2 inch nuts, and it will return to 0 every time. Thanks for watching.